My name is Gavin Evans, and this is my review of Barry Season 4, and this review will have spoilers, so there's your warning. But I really like Seasons 1, 2, and 3 of Barry, and I was pumped for this season, especially when I heard it was going to be the last. I like it when shows end on top instead of going on forever, and I thought the announcement that this was going to be it was brilliant. And after seeing the entire season, I unfortunately have to say this is the worst season yet, and I think it's actually too short. But let's get into it first with the first half, and I really liked everything with Barry in jail. I like how he's a loner who kind of reconnects with Fuchs. I like how he's willing to give the CIA or the FBI information on Hank. And I love it how Sally sees him one time and tells him that he made her feel safe, and how it goes straight to his head. And you just get a sense that this guy is truly an unnerved psychopath by this point. And I love the scene when Hank tries to get him killed. I thought it was both hilarious and thrilling. And I also loved everything in the first half with Sally as she's trying to become a teacher, and how she's actually just is a complete dick, and how she still uses her students as a way to try to get one last war with seeing Hadel. And when that doesn't work out, you see her resort to desperate measures. I love how Hank's and Cristobal's storyline continues to evolve, and when Hank gets paranoid and Cristobal dies, I thought that had tons of weight behind it. And I loved the sand pit. That was a really great moment. And I love how Gene's success from the ending of season 3 goes straight to his head, and he thinks about how he wants to dramatize it. And how when he hears that Barry breaks out, how it really gets to his head and he accidentally shoots his son. So the first half of this season, I'm like, this is some of the best stuff of this entire series. Episode 4 was consistently great, and when we get that time jump at the end of that episode, I was just jaw on the floor like, what? This is such a brilliant decision. And I actually loved episode 5 as we see what Barry and Sally's life are like now with a kid. Barry tells his son false narratives of his life to try to make himself come across as the good guy. And Sally gets to act every day, but she is completely passionless. She just seems like an empty shell of a human being. And I really loved this because you see everyone get what they wanted, including Hank and Fuchs, but is it really what they should have gotten? Was any of this good for them? And I just think there's some complexities to it. And then Barry decides to go back to LA, and unfortunately from this point on, the drop in quality is so apparent. It just feels so aimless, and to be honest, rushed. Barry has nothing to do after the first 5 episodes. The last few, he's just planning to kill Gene, then he gets kidnapped, then he escapes, then he goes to save Sally and his son, and then he kinda does, but not really, and then he gets killed, and that's it. I feel like you needed a lot more momentum on his character, and it just felt like he ended with a whimper, with the least interesting he's ever been. I would have liked for him to have a bit more to do. And when Jim kidnaps Barry, I was just like, really? This again? And then Fuchs gets out of jail right when Barry arrives in LA, and that felt contrived. And then Sarah, I feel like, was just completely mishandled. she starts having breakdowns and seeing visions in episode 6. And then just like that, she's ready to be held accountable for the first time in her life. 8 years of building a life with Barry and her kid doesn't matter. They need to be held responsible. And I just didn't buy that. And the entire plot with her and the kid getting kidnapped felt very contrived. And then we get to the final episode, and look, I love the one shot where we see the two gangs kill each other just like that. It's really well directed, but it just feels so rushed. It isn't an owned moment, and because of that, it has no weight. And Hank, one of the main characters, he dies and it has no weight. And I do like, the best part of the finale is how Fuchs actually goes to protect Barry's son and how he gives him back to Barry. That was a very satisfying note for his character to end on. But then Sarah leaves Barry, which I didn't really buy. Like, she stayed with him for 8 years as a fugitive and now she leaves him. Like, for something of that big of a character turn, you have to have something big happen. And I just feel like they really butchered it though. And then we've got Barry, who refuses to take accountability until talking to that one dude for like 2 minutes. And then he's ready to turn himself in. And Gene shoots him and he's dead. I don't like that. It felt like a sudden death for the sake of it. I feel like jail, being away from his kid, is a far worse punishment for him. That would force him to reflect. And I don't know, it just felt like a cop-out. And I kind of like the idea that Gene becomes the murderer people think he is, and how everything with him gets messed up, and the storytelling, and how everybody thinks he's a bad guy. You know, and I do like the idea of the false narrative, but to me, it just comes out of nowhere. And that's what the ending's relying on. Like, it's a very ambitious, out there ending for this movie to be made about Barry that paints him to be a hero. I just don't think it works with what's been set up in the show up until this point. I don't think it's an owned ending. You know, I feel like the show has, yes, there's been an element of, well, the characters see themselves differently than they actually are, but I don't think this false narrative leans into that enough. I feel like the show has really been about, to what degree is a character responsible for their actions? To what degree should they be held accountable? And I like what they're trying to do in the end, but it just comes out of nowhere. And there's an element where Barry's trying to earn forgiveness from God, and that didn't really work for me. So yeah, like, the first 5 episodes of this season I thought were some of the best of this entire series, especially episode 4, but the last 3 just, I felt like was rushed, was anticlimactic, unsatisfying, and didn't really work for me. Now, the direction from Bill Hader throughout this season is great. There's so many great directing decisions. Like I said, that one scene at the end of the 2 gangs, directing-wise, is masterful. I love some of the cinematography in this show. And I love how Barry and Sally live in this place in the middle of nowhere. It just highlights the isolation of these characters. I do think this show continues to be really funny. I do like how Barry listens to the sermons time and time again until he finds one that aligns with what he wants to do. Bingo is a very funny line. I like it when he buys guns at the end. Like, the show is clearly progressive, but it does a very good job with it. It does make for some good humor, and I thought the one scene of Hank shooting the missile at Fuchs was just hilarious. And yeah, that was the funniest moment of this entire season to me. And the cast does a really great job as always. Bill Hader is incredible for the first half of this season, where you just see a side of him that you haven't seen before. He's truly unhinged and just more messed up than ever before, and I wish he had a bit more to work with in the latter half. Sarah Goldberg, I think, is very good, especially in the first half, but like I said, the second half I feel mishandled her character. Henry Winkler is great throughout. I thought Stephen Root was really good. Anthony Kerrigan, I think, is absolutely fantastic. Some of his best work throughout. He hits those comedic beats. He shows emotional range. Michael Orby was really great. Robert Wisdom is fine. I feel like this character has kind of been like someone who's viewed as good, and I don't know if I like how they handled his character. Yeah, I'm not really big on what they did with him. Zach Gullinger as the kid does a good job, and in the last episode, Jaden Martell plays Barry's kid grown up, and I just find it funny because I believe Bill Hader played the older version of Jaden Martell's character in it. So that's a neat little Easter egg. But yeah, like I still liked this season. I still thought it had some very strong elements. The directing, the performances, and the scripts for the first 5 episodes, but the last few really dropped the bar to me. It doesn't ruin this season by any means, but it does allow this show to end on a bit more of a whimper than I would have liked. But I'll still give Barry season 4 a 6.5 out of 10. Okay, have you seen Barry season 4? What did you think? Let me know in the comments down below. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, stay tuned for more videos soon, and Gavin out.